Hi, let's talk about notes number 5, which are properties and operations of real numbers. So a couple of properties that I'm sure you've been learning about since you were in Algebra 1. We had the closure property here. This was a property that meant if we had a real number and another real number, we add them together, the answer is a real number. Ooh. Commutative property means I can change the orders around, like commute. Think about the word commute, commutative property. All right, 3 plus 4 and 4 plus 3 are the same thing. We had the associative property, which associative property of addition and associative property of multiplication. You change the grouping and you're going to get the same answer. Think about how the word associate, it's who you associate, who you group with. And then we, of course, have the identity properties. These are fun. Any number plus 0, you know, is itself. Any number times 1 is itself. So we have the identity property of 0 and the identity property of 1. So they're used with different operations. And then we've got the inverse property. So inverse property, 2 different inverse properties. We've got one for addition, any number plus its opposite equals 0. Sometimes you would call that the property of opposites. People like that, prop of op. Our book doesn't call it that. Our book calls it the inverse property. And the reciprocal property, any number times its reciprocal is equal to 1, and that's the inverse property. And finally, everybody's favorite, the distributive property, which I know you spent a lot of time working through in your algebra classes. Good times, right? Distributive property. So I'm not going to go through and do all these problems with you. I'm just going to remind you that we use these properties when we're going to simplify. I mean, obviously, if you had A, you know that 6 and the 9 go together, so you're using the associative property to bring them together. You do the same thing with 5/8 times 16y in letter B, all right? So let's try those. Distributive property, you're going to take what you have on the outside. So here we've got this 3 on the outside, and it gets distributed to both the X and the Y. So both of them. Now, really, X and Y in this case, you cannot add those two together, obviously. So that's why, you know, you would distribute. Okay. Let's see. This is a good word problem. Let's talk through this one. It says, blood pressure is the maximum pressure produced by each heartbeat. Both low blood pressure and high blood pressure may be a cause for medical concern. Therefore, healthcare professionals are interested in the patient's pressure difference from the normal, or the P and then the sub D. If 120 is considered normal systolic pressure, then, all right, so here's the formula they're going to give us, okay, where P is the patient's systolic pressure. So what we're going to do is we're just going to substitute the value of 113 in there. All right, so really not a difficult question. You're going to use your absolute value. How far away is that from 0 on the number line? -7 is 7 spaces. So therefore, your answer is 7. And finally, the last part, you're working through absolute value questions. So in this problem, you're going to go ahead and you're going to take your value of 6, -6 and 10, and substitute those in for X and Y. So we'll go ahead and we'll replace this X, we'll replace this Y with the -6 and 10. Now think about your order of operations. You are not going to go ahead and use these absolute value symbols right away, are you? No, 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 no. What you're going to do is you're going to multiply this 2 times the -6, you get the -12. And then you're going to multiply this 3 times the 10 and you get your 30. And then from that point, that's when we're going to pull those absolute values back in. I've got -12 minus 30, which is -42. Then I take the absolute value of 42. So be really careful with your order of operations. Okay. The last problem bothers kids. I want you to think about this one in terms of a number line. It says find the difference between -5 and 8. So I would have you picture it in your head. You've got the number line with -5 here and 8 here. So picture it. So to go from -5 to 0 is 5. And then from 0 to 8 is 8. So you're really adding 8 and 5, which gives you 13. Really, the other way to do it with an algorithm is you're going to take any 2 points. If you have points A and you have point B, all you're going to do is take the absolute value of their difference to go ahead and find those points. So here my points are -5 and 8. So I have -5 minus 8. and that's going to give me the absolute value of negative 13, which is 13. Okay, so follow that model anytime you have problems. Have fun in your problem set.